Hello class, this is both lessons 3-3 and 3-4 about how to multiply and divide integers. So if I have two integers, it's possible that they both are the same sign. And when you multiply or divide them and they have the same sign, it's going to be positive. For example, a positive times a positive is still a positive number. Or a negative times a negative will turn out to be a positive number as well. The same goes with division. If I have a positive number divided by another positive, it's going to give me a positive answer. Or a negative divided by another negative is going to give me a positive result. Now, when the two numbers have different signs, where one is positive and one is negative, it is always going to give you a negative answer when you're multiplying or dividing them. So, for instance, if I start with a positive and I multiply it by a negative number, I'm going to get a negative result. Or if you start with a negative and you multiply it by a positive, you still are going to get a negative answer. And the same goes with division. If you start with a positive and divide it by a negative, it's going to give you a negative answer. Or if you start with a negative and divide it by a positive, it still is going to give you a negative number. So let's just do a few examples and then we will be done. So our first example says 9 times negative 11. They have opposite signs, so it's going to give me a negative answer, negative 99. The next example says 0 times negative 100, and 0 times anything is just 0. All right, here's our next one. It is negative 4 times negative 8. They have the same sign, so it's going to give me a positive answer, positive 32. For our fourth example, we're going to do some division. So I have negative 24 divided by positive 3. They have different signs, so it's going to give me a negative result, negative 8. Our next example is going to be negative 35 divided by negative 7. They have the same sign, so it's going to give me a positive answer, positive 5. All right, we're almost done. Let's do two more. For this one, we're going to start with 0 and divide it by a negative number, negative 25. And 0 divided by anything is still 0. And now for our final example, I have negative 25 divided by 0. And this is going to give me a result where we would say no solution. Or if it was on your calculator, you would see the word error. Or a lot of times we also say undefined, because you cannot divide something into 0 parts. The smallest amount of parts is to divide it into 1 part. So let's go ahead and move on to some more difficult problems. Negative 4 times negative 7 times negative 2. That's 28 times negative 2, which is negative 56. All right, in our next problem, we need to do the exponent first, which is 16. And then I can multiply negative 5 times 16 is negative 80. And negative 80 times negative 9 is positive 720. In my next example, negative 7 times positive 15 gives me negative 105. And then negative times a negative is positive 105. Times positive 2 is positive 210. My next example, I have both multiplication and division in it. So I'm going to actually cross cancel the 10 and the negative 5 by dividing them both by 5. And then negative 3 times positive 2 is negative 6. On the bottom, I still have negative 1. So negative 6 divided by negative 1 is positive 6. Similarly, I'm going to cross cancel. In my next example, I can divide the 18 and the negative 6 both by positive 6. And so that's 3 times 9, which is 27, divided by negative 1, which will give me negative 27 for my final answer. And that's it. All right, so now we're going to move on to a word problem. It says 2 farms begin the year with $1,500 of extra savings each for emergencies. The table shows the amount of money each farm earned, which is called the revenue, and the amount of money that each farm spent, which is called the expenses, for 1 month. So that's what's in their chart. If their revenue and expenses are the consistent each month, then will each farm have enough savings for the whole year? And if so, how much will they have left over? So I need to figure out how much they're spending on their expenses for an entire year, and also how much they're making, which is their revenue, for an entire year, and then see if I need to borrow from the $1,500 of my savings. So for farm number 1, let's just do that. Let's figure out the revenue and let's subtract the expenses and see if I end with a positive number or if I need to borrow for my savings. So this is going to be 12 times the $308 that I made on the potatoes minus 12 times all of my expenses. All right, and that's for the farm supplies, the water, and the maintenance. So when I multiply those values, I get 3,696. And when I add those expenses, they total to 330. So 12 times 330 is 3,960, which gives me a negative value of negative $264, which means I need to borrow from my savings. And when I do that, I find that I am left with $1,236 left over in my savings. So I did have enough to finish off the year. I just had to use my savings a little bit. Let's go ahead and check out farm number 2 now. And we're going to do the same process. We're going to find out how much revenue I made throughout the year for farm number 2 and subtract the expenses for the entire year. And their values are a little higher. So 12 times 476. And then for their expenses, I have 211 plus 248 plus 147. So when I multiply the first 2 numbers, I get $5,712. And then when I add those 3 expenses together, I get 606. And when I multiply that by 12, I get 7,272. When I subtract those values, I get negative 1,560, which it means that I do not have enough money in my savings account. I only have $1,500. So farm number 2 did not have enough money, even with their savings, to continue their farm. All right, let's move on now to our final example. Natalie had $165 in her bank account at the beginning of the summer. Over the next 10 weeks, she added $160 to her savings each week while spending $40 per week. When summer ends, she plans on spending $105 per week. For how many weeks can she make withdrawals until her balance is $0? So let's figure out how much money she has at the end of the summer. She has that starting of $165 plus 10 weeks where she made $160 each week. But then we need to take away those 10 weeks where she spent $40. So let's go ahead and multiply some of those values. So I'm going to add 1,600 minus 400. So I can combine those. That gives me $1,765. Take away $400 is a total of $1,365 at the end of the summer. And now I can just divide it by the $105 that she's going to spend each week, which gives me 13 weeks where she can spend that money until she reaches $0. And that's it. So I hope that this lesson made sense. Please let me know if you have any questions when you come into class.